The morning sun cast long shadows across Westfield High School as 17-year-old Emma Richardson walked through the front doors. Her designer backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, and her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Most students would see the daughter of tech billionaire Marcus Richardson and assume she had the perfect life. They would be wrong. Emma kept her head down as she navigated through the crowded hallway. The whispers followed her everywhere she went. Some students envied her wealth, others resented it, but few bothered to see the person behind the famous last name. She had learned long ago that real friendships were hard to come by when your father's company was worth billions. Well, look who decided to show up, a voice called out from behind her. Emma's shoulders tensed. She recognized that voice immediately, Derek Martinez, the school's star quarterback and her biggest tormentor for the past 2 years. Derek stood 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His father owned several successful restaurants in town, making him wealthy enough to feel entitled but not wealthy enough to ignore the Richardson fortune. He had made it his personal mission to remind Emma that money couldn't buy her respect or friends. "I'm talking to you, Princess," Derek said, stepping in front of her locker. His 3 closest friends, Jake, Tyler, and Matt, flanked him like bodyguards. They were all on the football team, all from well-off families and all eager to please their leader. Emma tried to sidestep them, but Derek moved to block her path. "What's the rush? Daddy's driver waiting outside in the Bentley." The boys laughed at his joke, though Emma drove herself to school in a modest Honda Civic, a deliberate choice to avoid drawing attention. "Please just leave me alone," Emma said quietly, clutching her books tighter against her chest. She had learned that fighting back only made things worse. Derek fed off reactions, and the more she showed how much his words hurt, the more creative he became with his cruelty. "Leave you alone?" Derek's voice dripped with fake concern. "But we're just trying to be friendly. Isn't that right, guys?" His friends nodded eagerly, enjoying the show. "Besides, someone needs to keep you grounded. Can't have you floating away on all that daddy's money." Other students had begun to gather, forming a loose circle around the confrontation. Some pulled out their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. Emma's cheeks burned with embarrassment as she realized she was becoming the morning's entertainment. "I heard your dad fired another 100 employees last week," Derek continued, his voice getting louder for the growing audience. "Must be nice to destroy families while sitting in your mansion counting money." The accusation was false. Richardson Technologies had actually been hiring. But Derek never let facts get in the way of a good insult. Emma's jaw tightened. She could handle attacks on herself, but she wouldn't let anyone attack her father. Marcus Richardson was a good man who had built his company from nothing and always treated his employees fairly. "That's not true, and you know it," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Oh, did I hit a nerve?" Derek stepped closer, invading her personal space. "What's wrong? Truth hurt?" He was close enough now that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the protein shake he'd had for breakfast. "Back off, Derek." The voice came from behind the crowd. Everyone turned to see Sarah Chen pushing through the circle of students. Sarah was one of the few people at school who had ever stood up for Emma, though her interventions usually made things worse. Derek's expression darkened. He didn't like being challenged, especially by someone he considered beneath him. "This doesn't concern you, Sarah. Why don't you mind your own business?" "Bullying is everyone's business," Sarah replied, moving to stand beside Emma. She was smaller than Derek by nearly a foot, but she held her ground with impressive determination. "Bullying?" Derek laughed, and his friends joined in. "I'm just having a conversation with my good friend Emma here. Isn't that right, Emma?" He reached out and grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "We're all friends here." Emma tried to pull away, but Derek's grip tightened. "Let go of me," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The hallway had grown quiet now, everyone watching to see what would happen next. "I don't think I will," Derek said, his mask of fake friendliness slipping away. "I think it's time someone taught you some humility. You walk around here like you own the place, but you're nothing special. Just another spoiled rich kid who thinks money makes her better than everyone else." "Derek, stop," Sarah said, stepping forward. But Jake and Tyler moved to block her path, making it clear she wouldn't be interfering. Derek's other hand moved to Emma's throat, not quite choking her but making his intentions clear. "Maybe a little reminder of your place is exactly what you need," he whispered, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Emma's eyes widened with genuine fear. This was different from Derek's usual verbal abuse. There was something darker in his eyes today, something that made her realize the situation was escalating beyond anything that had happened before. The crowd of students watched in stunned silence. Some looked uncomfortable, but none moved to help. They were all too afraid of Derek's retaliation, or too interested in seeing what would happen to the rich girl who usually seemed untouchable. Derek's grip on her throat tightened slightly, just enough to make breathing difficult. "What's wrong, Princess? Cat got your tongue?" His friends laughed nervously, sensing that their leader might be going too far but too loyal to speak up. Emma's heart raced as she realized that no one was coming to help her. The teachers were all in their classrooms preparing for first period, and the students were either too scared or too entertained to intervene. She was completely alone, trapped in Derek's grip with no way to escape. The morning that had started like any other was quickly becoming her worst nightmare, and she had no idea that help was about to arrive from the most unexpected source. Marcus the Hammer. Torres pulled his pickup truck into the parking lot of Westfield High School, checking his watch as he turned off the engine. He was running late for his meeting with the principal about his daughter Sophia's academic progress. The morning training session at his MMA gym had run longer than expected, when one of his professional fighters needed extra help preparing for an upcoming match. At 34, Marcus was still in peak physical condition, despite officially retiring from professional fighting 3 years earlier. His hands bore the calluses and scars of countless training sessions and fights, and his muscled frame filled out his simple black t-shirt and jeans. He preferred to keep a low profile in his suburban neighborhood, where most people knew him simply as Sophia's dad who ran a martial arts school downtown. Marcus had never intended to become a single father. When Sophia was born 8 years ago, he thought he and her mother would raise her together. But Maria had struggled with the demands of being in a relationship with a professional fighter who traveled constantly for matches and training camps. She left when Sophia was 2, leaving Marcus to figure out parenthood on his own while managing his fighting career. The transition hadn't been easy, but it had given Marcus a new purpose. Every victory in the octagon after Sophia was born was dedicated to her. Every training session was motivated by his desire to provide for her future. When he finally retired with a record of 28 wins and only 3 losses, he invested his earnings into opening Torres Combat Academy, where he taught everything from basic self-defense to professional MMA training. As he walked toward the school's main entrance, Marcus noticed a crowd of students gathered in the hallway visible through the large windows. At first he assumed it was just typical teenage socializing before classes started, but something about the scene made him pause and look more carefully. Through the glass he could see what appeared to be a confrontation in the center of the crowd. A large teenage boy seemed to be grabbing a smaller student, and the watching crowd looked more tense than excited. Marcus's training had taught him to read body language and recognize dangerous situations, and every instinct he had developed over years of fighting was now telling him that something was seriously wrong. Without hesitation, Marcus changed direction toward the front doors. His meeting with the principal could wait. A student appeared to be in trouble, and his protective instincts kicked in immediately. He had seen too many young people hurt by bullies, both in his gym and in the community, to ignore what looked like an assault in progress. The security guard at the front desk looked up as Marcus entered. "Can I help you, sir?" the elderly man asked, rising from his chair. "There's a situation in the hallway," Marcus said calmly but firmly. "A student appears to be in distress." He didn't wait for permission or explanation. He simply walked past the security desk toward the crowd of students. As he got closer, the details of the situation became clearer. A teenage boy who looked like he belonged on the football team had his hands on a blonde girl who was clearly in distress. The boy was significantly larger than his victim, and his body language suggested he was enjoying the power he held over her. Marcus recognized the dynamic immediately. In his years as a professional fighter, he had encountered plenty of bullies who used their size and strength to intimidate others. The difference was that in the octagon, both participants had chosen to be there. This girl had no such choice and no way to defend herself against someone so much larger. "Hey," Marcus's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd like a blade. The authority in his tone made every student in the hallway turn to look at him. "Let her go now." Derek Martinez turned toward the sound, his grip on Emma still tight. His first instinct was to tell this random adult to mind his own business, but something about the man's presence made him hesitate. The stranger wasn't particularly tall, but there was something about the way he carried himself that suggested he wasn't someone to be taken lightly. "This doesn't concern you," Derek said, trying to maintain his authority in front of his friends and the watching crowd. "We're just having a conversation." Marcus took a step closer, and suddenly the space felt smaller. "That doesn't look like a conversation to me," he said, his voice steady and calm. "Looks like assault. I'm going to ask you one more time to let her go." The crowd of students began to back away, sensing that the situation was about to change dramatically. Some of them had pulled out their phones to record, but now they weren't sure if they were about to witness a fight or a rescue. Derek's friends exchanged nervous glances. They had been confident when facing Emma and Sarah, but this adult seemed different from the teachers they were used to intimidating or avoiding. There was something about his posture and the way he moved that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. "Who are you supposed to be?" Derek asked, though his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. He still hadn't released Emma, but his grip had loosened slightly. "Someone who doesn't like watching kids get hurt," Marcus replied. He was close enough now that Derek could see the small scars around his eyes and on his knuckles, marks that told a story of someone who had been in more than his share of physical confrontations. Emma looked between Derek and the stranger who had appeared from nowhere to help her. She had never seen him before, but there was something reassuring about his calm confidence. For the first time since Derek had grabbed her, she felt like she might actually be safe. Sarah Chen recognized the change in atmosphere immediately. She had taken several self-defense classes at Torres Combat Academy with her older brother, and she knew exactly who had just walked into their hallway. "That's Marcus Torres," she whispered to the student next to her. The name rippled through the crowd in hushed whispers. Several students pulled up Google on their phones, showing each other highlight videos of Marcus's most famous knockout victories. The retired UFC champion had just walked into their high school drama, and suddenly Derek's size advantage didn't seem nearly as impressive. Derek felt the shift in the crowd's energy and realized he was no longer in control of the situation. His friends were backing away, leaving him exposed and alone with his victim and this mysterious adult who seemed completely unafraid of confrontation. Marcus took another step forward, and now he was close enough to act if Derek made any sudden moves. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Let her go and walk away, or I'll make you let her go." Derek Martinez had built his reputation on intimidation and the knowledge that no one at Westfield High would dare challenge him. His size, his family's money, and his status as the star quarterback had always been enough to get his way. But as he stared at Marcus Torres, he realized he was facing something completely different from the teachers and students he usually dominated. "You can't touch me," Derek said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "My father will sue this school and you if you lay a hand on me." He was used to threats working, used to adults backing down when faced with potential legal consequences. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Your father's lawyers can't help you right now, kid. And they definitely can't help you if you hurt that girl while I'm standing here watching." The crowd had grown larger as word spread through the school that something serious was happening in the main hallway. Students peered around corners and through doorways, many of them recording with their phones. The morning announcements had been forgotten, and even some teachers had begun to notice the commotion. Emma could feel Derek's grip on her throat trembling slightly. She realized that for the first time in their twisted relationship, he was afraid. The boy who had terrorized her for 2 years was suddenly faced with someone who wasn't intimidated by his size or his threats. "Look, man," Derek said, trying a different approach. "This is just a misunderstanding. We go to school together. We're friends, right, Emma?" He looked at her expectantly, but his grip remained firm on her throat. "Friends don't grab each other by the throat," Marcus observed calmly. "Friends don't corner each other in hallways, and friends definitely don't make threats." He had positioned himself strategically so that Derek would have to go through him to escape, while also blocking Derek's friends from potentially jumping in. Jake, Tyler, and Matt had backed away completely now, pretending they had never been involved in the confrontation. They recognized Marcus from viral fight videos and Instagram posts, and none of them wanted to become the subject of their own viral video showing them getting dominated by a professional fighter. "This is stupid," Derek muttered. But he still hadn't released Emma. His pride wouldn't let him back down in front of the entire school, even though every rational part of his brain was screaming at him to apologize and walk away. "What's stupid is a kid your size picking on someone half your weight," Marcus replied. "What's stupid is thinking your daddy's money makes you untouchable. What's really stupid is not taking the easy way out when it's being offered to you." Principal Henderson appeared at the edge of the crowd, having been alerted by a teacher about the disturbance. She was a small woman in her 50s who had been running Westfield High for over a decade, and she immediately recognized that this was beyond a typical student conflict. "Mr. Martinez, release Ms. Richardson immediately," she called out, using her authoritative principal voice. But Derek ignored her, keeping his attention focused on Marcus, who represented the real threat in the situation. "You heard the lady," Marcus said. "Last chance to do this the easy way." Derek's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. He was trapped between his pride and his fear, with dozens of students recording his humiliation. In his twisted logic, backing down from Marcus would be worse than whatever consequences might come from continuing to hold Emma. "I don't take orders from some washed-up fighter," Derek snarled, his grip tightening on Emma's throat. It was the wrong thing to say to the wrong person at the wrong time. Marcus moved faster than anyone in the hallway could follow. Years of professional training had taught him to read his opponent's intentions before they acted on them, and he saw Derek's grip tighten a split second before it happened. In one fluid motion, Marcus stepped forward, grabbed Derek's wrist with his left hand while simultaneously striking a pressure point on Derek's forearm with his right thumb. Derek's hand immediately went numb and released Emma involuntarily. She stumbled backward, gasping and rubbing her throat, while Derek stared at his suddenly useless hand in shock. "Neural pressure point," Marcus explained calmly, as if he were teaching a class. "Temporary but effective. Your feelings should come back in about 10 minutes. He maintained his grip on Derek's wrist, keeping the bigger teenager completely under control despite the size difference. The crowd erupted in whispers and exclamations. Several students were already uploading videos to social media with captions, like "UFC fighter saves girl from bully," and "Derek Martinez gets owned by real fighter." The humiliation Derek had been trying to avoid was now complete and permanent. "Let go of me," Derek demanded, trying to pull away from Marcus's grip. But years of grappling training made it impossible for the teenager to break free, no matter how much stronger he thought he was. "I will," Marcus said reasonably, "right after we have a conversation about how you're going to treat people from now on." Principal Henderson pushed through the crowd, finally reaching the center of the confrontation. "Mr. Torres, I appreciate your intervention, but I need you to release the student so we can handle this through proper channels." Marcus recognized the principal from his earlier visits to the school regarding Sophia, and he respected her position. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson," he said, releasing Derek's wrist. "But I think this young man has something he wants to say first." Derek flexed his fingers, feeling returning to his hand. He was surrounded by his peers, recorded by dozens of phones, and had just been completely dominated by a man significantly smaller than himself. His carefully constructed image as the school's alpha had been destroyed in less than 60 seconds. Emma stood behind Marcus, still shaken, but safe. She looked at her rescuer with a mixture of gratitude and amazement. In 2 years of dealing with Derek's abuse, no adult had ever stepped in so decisively or effectively. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still hoarse from Derek's grip. Marcus turned slightly to acknowledge her words while keeping his attention on Derek. "You don't need to thank me," he said gently. "No one should have to deal with that." Derek realized that every second he remained silent was being recorded and would be analyzed by his classmates for years to come. His reputation was already ruined, but he could still avoid criminal charges if he played this right. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words coming out like they physically hurt. "I was out of line. It won't happen again." Marcus studied Derek's face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus mere self-preservation. "Apologies are nice," he said finally, "but actions matter more than words. I hope for everyone's sake that you mean what you just said." Principal Henderson took control of the situation with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Martinez, my office now," she said firmly. "Ms. Richardson, you need to see the school nurse to document any injuries." She turned to address the crowd of students still holding their phones. Everyone else, get to your first period classes immediately, or you'll all be serving detention this afternoon. The hallway began to clear reluctantly, students whispering excitedly about what they had just witnessed. The videos were already spreading across social media platforms, and by lunchtime, the entire school would know that Derek Martinez had been humiliated by Emma Richardson's unexpected protector. Marcus watched as Derek was escorted toward the principal's office, flanked by a security guard who had finally arrived after missing all the action. The former quarterback walked with his head down, his swagger completely gone. His friends had abandoned him the moment things got serious, leaving him to face the consequences alone. Mr. Torres, Principal Henderson approached him as the hallway emptied. "I need to speak with you as well. What you did was unconventional, but I can't say I'm sorry you were here." Marcus nodded, understanding that there would be paperwork and questions about his intervention. "I was actually here for a meeting about my daughter Sophia's grades," he said. "This just happened to be on the way." Emma had been helped to the nurse's office by Sarah Chen, who stayed with her friend as the school nurse examined her throat and documented the red marks Derek's grip had left. The physical damage was minor, but the emotional impact was significant. For the first time in 2 years, someone had stood up for her when she couldn't defend herself. "Who was that man?" Emma asked Sarah as the nurse applied a cold compress to her throat. "Marcus Torres," Sarah replied. "He's a retired UFC fighter. My brother takes classes at his gym downtown. He's kind of a legend in mixed martial arts, but he keeps a low profile around here. I had no idea he had any connection to our school." Emma processed this information, still struggling to believe that a professional fighter had randomly appeared to save her from Derek's escalating abuse. "Why did he help me? He doesn't even know me." "Because that's the kind of person he is," Sarah said. "My brother says Mr. Torres teaches all his students that martial arts should only be used to protect people who can't protect themselves. I guess he practices what he preaches." In the principal's office, Derek sat across from Mrs. Henderson's desk with his hands folded in his lap. The feeling had returned to his arm, but the humiliation of being controlled so easily by a smaller man would last much longer. His parents had been called and were driving to the school for an emergency meeting. "Derek, in my 15 years as an educator, I have never seen such a clear case of assault on school property," Principal Henderson said, her voice stern but not unkind. "You're facing potential criminal charges, immediate suspension, and possible expulsion. Your football season is over, and your college scholarship offers will likely be withdrawn once this becomes public." Derek stared at the floor, the full weight of his actions finally sinking in. In less than an hour, his entire future had changed. The University of Texas scholarship that had been his ticket to continuing his football career was probably gone. His reputation as the school's golden boy was destroyed. His friends had turned their backs on him the moment he showed weakness. "I know," he said quietly. "I messed up bad." Mrs. Henderson studied the young man across from her desk. She had watched Derek Martinez grow up in her school system, and she remembered when he had been a sweet kid in middle school before the pressure of sports, popularity, and expectations had changed him. "Derek, I want to understand what happened out there. Emma Richardson has never done anything to hurt you. Her father's company employs half the parents in this town. Why have you been targeting her?" Derek was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with emotions and thoughts he had never had to examine before. "I don't know," he said finally. I guess I was jealous. She has everything handed to her and I have to work for everything. Football grades, my parents' approval. She just exists and gets treated like she's special. So you decided to make her life miserable? I thought if I could make her feel small, it would make me feel bigger." Derek's voice cracked slightly, but it never did. It just made me angrier. Meanwhile, Marcus was meeting with Principal Henderson's assistant principal, Mr. Williams, to give his statement about the incident. As a professional fighter, even a retired one, any physical altercation could have serious legal implications for him. "Mr. Torres, I want to be clear that the school appreciates your intervention," Mr. Williams said. "Ms. Richardson was clearly in danger and your actions likely prevented serious injury. However, we need to document exactly what happened for our report to the police and the school district." Marcus described the events clearly and factually, explaining how he had recognized the signs of an assault in progress and acted to protect a student in danger. His years of media training during his fighting career had taught him to stick to facts and avoid speculation. The kid was escalating, Marcus explained. I've seen enough violence to know when someone is about to cross a line they can't come back from. Another few seconds and that girl could have been seriously hurt. Emma's father, Marcus Richardson, arrived at the school within an hour of receiving the call about the incident. As one of the most recognizable faces in the state due to his tech company's success, his presence at Westfield High caused another stir among students and staff. Marcus Richardson was a tall, distinguished man in his early 50s who carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the smartest person in the room. He had built Richardson Technologies from a small software startup into a billion-dollar corporation. But his greatest pride was always his daughter. "Where is she?" he asked the moment he walked into the principal's office. His voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension that suggested he was fighting to control his anger about what had happened to Emma. "She's in the nurse's office." "Mr. Richardson," Principal Henderson assured him. "She's physically fine thanks to the intervention of another parent who happened to be here this morning." "I want to meet this person," Marcus Richardson said immediately. "I want to thank them personally." As the morning progressed, the story continued to spread beyond Westfield High. Local news stations picked up the viral videos, and by noon, UFC fighter saves CEO's daughter from school bully was trending on multiple social media platforms. Marcus Torres's quiet life as a single dad and gym owner was about to become much more complicated. The meeting between Marcus Torres and Marcus Richardson took place in Principal Henderson's office an hour after the incident. The two men couldn't have been more different in background and lifestyle, but they shared something important. They were both protective fathers who understood what it meant to worry about their children's safety. Marcus Richardson entered the office wearing a perfectly tailored business suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. His handshake was firm and his eye contact direct as Principal Henderson made the introductions. "Mr. Torres, I can't adequately express my gratitude for what you did today," Marcus Richardson said, his voice carrying genuine emotion. "My daughter called me in tears, not from fear or pain, but from relief that someone finally stood up for her." Marcus Torres felt slightly uncomfortable with the formal gratitude. He was wearing his simple gym clothes and work boots, still carrying the faint scent of the training mats from his early morning session. "Any parent would have done the same thing, Mr. Richardson. Your daughter was in trouble and I was in a position to help." "Please call me Marcus," the CEO said, settling into his chair. "And I have to disagree with you there. Most people would have walked by or called for help or assumed someone else would handle it. You put yourself at risk to protect a child who wasn't even yours." The two men talked for nearly an hour, discovering more common ground than either had expected. Both were single fathers raising children in a world that seemed increasingly dangerous. Both understood the challenges of balancing work demands with parenting responsibilities. Both worried about their kids being targeted because of their father's public profiles. "Emma has been dealing with this Derek Martinez situation for 2 years, Marcus Richardson explained, his frustration evident. "She never told me how bad it was getting. I knew she was struggling socially at school, but I had no idea she was being physically threatened." "Kids don't always tell us when they're in trouble," Marcus Torres replied, thinking about his own daughter, Sophia. "They don't want to worry us, or they think we won't understand, or they're embarrassed. It's one of the hardest parts of being a parent." Marcus Richardson nodded, appreciating the insight from someone who clearly understood the complexities of single parenthood. "Mr. Torres, Marcus, I want to find a way to properly thank you for what you did today. Is there anything I can do for you or your family?" Marcus Torres shook his head. "I didn't do it for a reward, Marcus. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I understand that, and it makes me respect you even more. But please let me at least buy you dinner. I'd like to get to know the man who saved my daughter." Meanwhile, Emma was finally ready to leave the nurse's office and return to class. The physical marks on her throat were already fading, but the emotional impact of the morning would take longer to heal. Sarah Chen had stayed with her through the entire ordeal, proving once again that she was a true friend. "I can't believe Derek just grabbed me like that," Emma said as they walked slowly toward their first period class. "I mean, he's been mean before, but this was different. This was scary." "He was showing off for his friends in the crowd," Sarah replied. "Bullies like Derek get more dangerous when they have an audience. They feel like they have to prove something." What would have happened if Mr. Torres hadn't shown up? Emma wondered aloud, a question that had been haunting her since the incident. "I don't want to think about that," Sarah said firmly, "but I'm glad we don't have to find out." The story had indeed spread far beyond Westfield High. By afternoon, news crews were parked outside the school, and reporters were trying to interview students about what they had witnessed. The viral videos had been viewed millions of times, and Marcus Torres was receiving friend requests and messages from people all over the world. At Torres Combat Academy, Marcus's afternoon classes were busier than usual. As word spread through the local martial arts community about what had happened, students and parents wanted to hear the story firsthand, and several new families inquired about enrollment. "Dad, you're famous," 8-year-old Sophia exclaimed when she arrived at the gym after school. She had heard older kids talking about the incident on the school bus and had seen the videos on her friend's phone. "Not the kind of famous I wanted to be, Mija," Marcus replied, helping her with her backpack. "I just helped someone who needed help. But you were so cool. Everyone at school is talking about how you made that mean boy let go of the girl just by touching his arm." Marcus smiled at his daughter's excitement, but he was more concerned about the attention the incident was bringing to their quiet life. He had retired from professional fighting partly to give Sophia a normal childhood away from cameras and crowds. Derek Martinez was suspended pending a full investigation, and his parents had hired a lawyer to help navigate the potential criminal charges. The video evidence was overwhelming, and several witnesses had given statements supporting Emma's version of events. That evening, Marcus Richardson called Marcus Torres personally to extend a dinner invitation for the following weekend. "I know you probably want this whole thing to blow over quickly," he said during their phone conversation, "but I'd really like Emma to have a chance to properly thank you. She's been asking about you all day." Marcus Torres considered the invitation carefully. He wasn't comfortable with attention or gratitude, preferring to help people quietly and move on. But he understood that sometimes people needed closure, needed to express their thanks properly. "All right," he agreed finally, "but somewhere casual. I'm not a fancy restaurant kind of guy. How about my house? I'll cook. Emma makes excellent cookies, and I'd love for you to meet her properly when she's not in crisis mode." The two men made plans for Saturday evening, beginning a friendship that neither had expected but both would value greatly. They had been brought together by circumstances neither would have chosen, but they recognized in each other the dedication and integrity that made them both good fathers and good men. As the week progressed, the immediate drama began to settle, but the impact of that morning in the hallway would continue to ripple through the lives of everyone involved. Derek's reign of terror was over. Emma felt safe at school for the first time in years, and Marcus Torres had gained the respect and friendship of one of the most powerful men in the state. The viral video would eventually fade from social media, but the relationships formed and lessons learned would last much longer. Sometimes it takes an unexpected hero to remind everyone what courage and compassion look like in action. Saturday evening arrived with perfect weather, and Marcus Torres found himself driving through one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the city. The Richardson estate was even more impressive in person than in the magazine articles he had seen over the years. The house was a modern masterpiece of glass and stone, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway that could accommodate a dozen cars. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, wearing her best dress and practically bouncing with excitement. "Dad, this house is huge. It's like a castle," she exclaimed as they pulled up to the front door. "Remember what we talked about?" Marcus reminded his daughter gently. "Mr. Richardson and Emma are just people like us. The money doesn't make them any different on the inside." Marcus Richardson answered the door himself, wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt that made him look more approachable than his usual business attire. His smile was genuine as he welcomed his guests into the spacious foyer. "Marcus, Sophia, welcome to our home," he said warmly. "Emma's been looking forward to this all week." Emma appeared from the kitchen carrying a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. She looked completely different from the frightened girl who had been cornered in the school hallway just days earlier. Her confidence had returned, and there was a brightness in her eyes that had been missing for months. "Mr. Torres, I wanted to thank you properly," she said, offering him the plate of cookies. "I made these myself. I wasn't sure what kind you liked, so I made chocolate chip because everyone likes chocolate chip, right?" Marcus smiled, taking one of the warm cookies. "These smell incredible, Emma. And please call me Marcus. Mr. Torres makes me feel old." Sophia hung back shyly behind her father until Emma noticed her and crouched down to her level. "You must be Sophia. Your dad has told me so much about you. Would you like to see my room? I have a really cool fish tank." The two girls disappeared upstairs, leaving the two fathers alone in the expansive living room. Marcus Richardson had indeed cooked dinner himself. Grilled salmon with roasted vegetables and rice pilaf that filled the house with delicious aromas. "This is nice," Marcus Torres said, genuinely appreciating the effort his host had put into making the evening comfortable, rather than fancy. "I was expecting something more formal." "I learned a long time ago that the best conversations happen over simple food in comfortable settings," Marcus Richardson replied, pouring them each a glass of wine. "Besides, after what you did for Emma, you could have demanded dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city." As they ate, the two men continued to discover surprising connections. Both had grown up in working-class families and understood the value of hard work. Both had achieved success in their respective fields through dedication and sacrifice. Both were trying to raise strong, independent daughters in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. "Emma seems like she's doing much better," Marcus Torres observed. "Has there been any more trouble at school?" "Derek Martinez was expelled," Marcus Richardson replied. "His family moved him to a private school across town. The other kids who were with him have been surprisingly apologetic. To Emma, I think seeing what happened to their leader made them reconsider their choices. Sometimes, people need to see consequences before they understand that actions have results," Marcus Torres said. "Derek's not a bad kid at heart, but he needed to learn that lesson before he hurt someone seriously." Upstairs, Emma and Sophia had bonded quickly over shared interests in art and animals. Sophia was fascinated by Emma's elaborate fish tank setup, while Emma was impressed by Sophia's karate skills that she demonstrated in the spacious bedroom. "Your dad is so cool," Emma said as they sat on her bed watching the tropical fish swim through their carefully arranged underwater landscape. "I saw the videos of his fights online. He was amazing. He doesn't like to talk about fighting anymore," Sophia said. "He says it's more important to teach people how to protect themselves and others than to be famous for hurting people." "That makes sense," Emma agreed. "He protected me when I really needed it. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Dad says there are lots of bullies in the world, but there are also lots of good people who will stand up to them if they're brave enough," Sophia said with the wisdom of a child who had been raised by a thoughtful father. Downstairs, Marcus Richardson was sharing his own struggles with balancing work and parenting. "Emma's mother died when she was 12, he explained. "Cancer. Since then, it's just been the two of us figuring things out as we go." Marcus Torres felt a connection to the pain in his friend's voice. "I'm sorry for your loss. Losing a parent is hard enough when you're an adult. I can't imagine dealing with that as a kid." "Emma was incredibly strong through the whole thing," Marcus Richardson continued. "Stronger than I was most days, but I think some of her social struggles at school came from feeling different from the other kids. Most of them have both parents and then add the money factor on top of that. Kids can be cruel when they don't understand someone's situation," Marcus Torres agreed. "Sophia deals with some of that too. Her mother left when she was little, and some kids ask uncomfortable questions." The evening continued with the comfortable conversation of two men who had found an unexpected friendship. They discussed everything from parenting strategies to business challenges to their hopes for their daughters' futures. When it was time to leave, both girls were reluctant to end their new friendship. Emma and Sophia exchanged phone numbers and made plans for Sophia to visit Emma's art studio the following weekend. "Thank you for tonight," Marcus Torres said as they stood in the driveway. "This was exactly what I needed after this crazy week." "Thank you for giving Emma her life back," Marcus Richardson replied. "She's been a different person since Monday. Confident, happy, ready to take on the world again." As Marcus and Sophia drove home through the quiet suburban streets, Sophia chattered excitedly about her new friend and the amazing house they had just visited. But Marcus was thinking about something deeper, the unexpected friendship that had emerged from a moment of crisis. 6 months later, the friendship between the two families had grown stronger. Emma and Sophia were like sisters. Marcus Torres had become a trusted advisor to Marcus Richardson on several business ventures, and both men had found the kind of genuine friendship that becomes more valuable with time. Derek Martinez, meanwhile, had thrived at his new school where he started fresh without his previous reputation. The humiliation of that morning in the hallway had forced him to examine his behavior and make real changes. He eventually wrote a letter of apology to Emma, not because he was required to, but because he had genuinely come to understand the harm he had caused. The viral video that had made Marcus Torres briefly famous was eventually forgotten by the internet, but the relationships it had created continued to enrich all their lives. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most meaningful connections, and sometimes a single moment of courage can change everything for the better. Emma Richardson never forgot the morning when a stranger stepped in to protect her when she couldn't protect herself. It taught her that there were good people in the world willing to stand up for what was right, and it inspired her to become someone who would do the same for others when they needed help. Marcus Torres returned to his quiet life training fighters and raising his daughter, but he had gained something valuable in the process: a friend who understood the challenges of single parenthood, and a reminder that sometimes the most important fights happen outside the octagon. In the end, what started as a confrontation between a bully and his victim became a story about the power of courage, the importance of standing up for others, and the unexpected friendships that can emerge when people choose to do the right thing, even when it's difficult.